I believe that both parties need to come to a mutually binding, peaceful agreement. The Israelis are now a multicultural society of 9 million people, of which 2 million plus are Arab Muslims living in Israel. If settlers from Europe came into your country and took your land, what would you do? You would fight. Of course you would. I can find no evidence of an indigenous Palestinian currency. I can find no evidence of an indigenous Palestinian flag or emblem. Until 1964, has there ever been a tribe, a race, a people, a culture, an ethnicity known as the Palestinians? I have read probably about 3 to 400,000, similar to the number of Arabs that were living there. And those Arabs did not identify themselves as Palestinians. The Arab Higher Committee, who testified on oath to the Peel Commission in 1937, stated categorically that no land had been stolen, all had been purchased legally, and that actually, Faisal, no Palestinian land was actually ever stolen. It just wasn't. Did you know, and I bet you didn't, that in the Jewish state of Israel, there are 403 mosques. 403 mosques. The Israelites, the children of Abraham, the sons of Jacob, the chosen people, the children of the land of milk and honey. I think it's the BBC, CNN, certainly Al Jazeera, obviously, have become very anti-Israel, very anti-Israel.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Time Slow Podcast. Today we have with us Peter Baum. Peter is a journalist. Rest, I'll leave it up to him to introduce himself. Peter, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for having me as a guest on your show. I have spent all my life working in the international financial markets, mainly working in the Far East and Middle East. Although I'm Jewish by birth and by religion, all my main client base in working in the international financial markets was mainly Arab and Muslim. So I'm very close to that community, and I have many, many friends and contacts in that part of the world. I got involved in, let's say, Middle East activism when I retired some years ago. And I'm now a foreign editor for a Bangladeshi-based magazine who allow me to write articles on the Israel-Palestinian issue, but from a very different perspective from that audience would expect. I write from, let's say, a pro-Israel, pro-Zionist point of view. And what I try to do is to challenge some of the false narrative and propaganda that has grown up around the issue in the last 4 or 5 decades.
Okay, thank you for this brief introduction. So I'm from Pakistan, and in Pakistan, this is commonly. Do you believe in the Palestine-Israel conflict? First of all, let me ask you this question.
Do I believe in the conflict?
Yeah. Is this a conflict, or this is not a conflict?
I believe that both parties need to come to a mutually binding, peaceful agreement where both Israeli and Palestinians can live in peace. We've seen what can be achieved in a very short space of time between Israel and other Arab nations. If we take, for example, what's happened with Israel and the United Arab Emirates and with Morocco as part of the former President Trump's Abraham Accords, the mutual trade benefits, the economic benefits in a short space of time have been spectacular. I'm hoping that that will expand to other Arab Muslim countries. And of course, I'm hoping it will actually come with the agreement of the Palestinians. At the moment, it looks as if that isn't a possibility. But with time, I'm hoping that that objective will be achieved. I'm pretty sure that if Israel expands its mutual agreements with other Arab Muslim countries, they will be the ones to put pressure on the Palestinian leadership to come to some agreement. And this horrible environment of daily hostilities can cease. That is what I hope and pray for.
Okay, all right. Let's see it in this way. The apartheid, we call it the apartheid regime, that's Israel, and what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, the you know the snatching of the lands of the Palestinians, then evacuating their homes and whatnot, that's happening in Israel Palestine, and that wall, that apartheid wall that the Israel has built, and the entry and the exit of the Palestinians that they have made difficult, and the Gaza Strip that have been separated from and they have been blocked, the economic activity there, and the civilian movements. And with that apartheid regime is being compared to the apartheid regime in South Africa. So do you think that, keeping in that mind, first of all, to understand that that understanding that thing is very necessary to going towards peace is the second thing. Firstly, you'll have to see how how both parties are living together, how both parties are interacting with each other, and the problems that they are facing. So with these problems, what can is this is what we call the institutional discrimination that's happening. So with that, keeping that in mind, how can the Muslim and the Jewish question be Jewish question in that area is going to come on terms with each other?
Okay, that's a very good question, and your audience in Pakistan would appreciate that question coming from you. But let me tell you some things, and going back to why you're interviewing me, I try to challenge the false narrative. And the first thing you came up with, Faisal, was the word apartheid, which, as we all know, has very negative connotations to everybody in the world. And we continue to hear this term apartheid leveled at the Jewish state of Israel. And Faisal, it is a false narrative. And if you give me a minute or two, I will explain why.
You have all the time, Peter. You have all the time.
Thank you, my friend. First of all, apartheid, I don't know whether you or your audience know what it actually means. It's an Afrikaans word, and it literally means segregation of the races. Segregation of the races. Please bear that in mind. Now, neither the Israelis nor the Palestinians are a race. That is the first thing. The Israelis are now a multicultural society of 9 million people, of which 2 million plus are Arab Muslims living in Israel. They can get on the same bus as a Jewish Israeli. They have the choice of whether to join the Israeli army or not. They have a vote. There are Arab parties. There are Arab nurses. There are Arab doctors. At all walks of life in Israeli society, Arabs are at the forefront of administration, of medication, in the army, etc. So the idea that Israel is an apartheid country is a false narrative. The second thing is, when we talk about the Palestinians, and again, maybe your audience don't know this, but I think they will appreciate this. The Palestinians are in two separate entities, what you would call the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. In the Gaza Strip, they are ruled by Hamas, and in the West Bank by the Palestinian Authority. Both those leaderships have charters, manifestos, the same as any government in power does. The Hamas Palestinian Charter is dated 1988. The Palestinian Authority Charter in the West Bank is dated 1968, an amendment of 1964. Faisal, in both of those charters, and you and your audience can check this out, in both of those charters or manifestos are the following. Extermination of the Jewish people is within both of those charters. Now, I know that you and your audience are going to find that hard to believe, because I would bet, I know we don't bet, but I would guess that none of your audience and you have ever read the Palestinian charters. But I assure you and your audience, in both those charters are Jew extermination. In both charters are the following: subservience to Islam before any other religion are in both charters. And actually in the 1988 charter, the Hamas charter, which is something quite disgusting, but you can check this out in articles 17, 22 and 28 of the 1988 charter, is this: it calls for the extermination of those people assisting, for example, the physically and mentally disabled or those suffering from cancer. The 1988 charter is the nearest thing that I've ever witnessed to what I would call Arab-Palestinian Nazi ideology. Now, you and your audience watching this can check this out to see whether I'm lying or not, but I am sure you I'm not, and I'm challenging the false narrative. So how can the multiracial Jewish state of Israel find a peace partner who indoctrinate their children as part of the Palestinian education system in both the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, where both those charters is the extermination of the Jewish state of Israel and Jewish people? So the first thing that I would say to you and your audience, who I hope really do want to see a mutually peaceful outcome, the first thing the Palestinians must do is to stop indoctrinating their children with Jew hatred, which currently forms part of the daily lives of the Palestinian children in both the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And I'm sure that your audience would have seen videos of young Palestinian children dressed up in military uniform, being trained in military tactics. So coming back to where you started from about Israel being an apartheid state, I hope that in a very few sentences I've proven to you it's not an apartheid state, because Arab Muslims form very much part of the Israeli multiracial society, and what the Israeli leadership is fighting against are two Palestinian leadership groups who are indoctrinating what is now 5 generations of children in Jew hatred. And this is why we see so many young men willing to take up arms and fight against the Jewish state of Israel, because of how they've been indoctrinated as children. May I just say one other thing before you ask me another question? In those Arab countries that are now part of the Abraham Accords, and Saudi Arabia, which currently is not part of the Abraham Accords, but hopefully soon will be, in those countries which are, in their educational textbooks, they have deleted every sentence that alludes to anti-Semitism. In Morocco, they have wiped out all those phrases and terms and chapters and even books generally that previously were taught to their children that contained anti-Jewish rhetoric. Similarly, in Bahrain, similarly in the United Arab Emirates, and in Jordan and Egypt, which would have peace agreements with Israel for some years now, that too has all been deducted. As soon as the Palestinian Authority and Hamas go along that path, that, Faisal, I truly believe, will be the first major step in trying to achieve a peace agreement. Until that happens, unfortunately, I can see nothing else but hostility between Palestinian and Israel.
All right. So you have explained it with the facts, with a few examples and you have said that this is the two parts of the Palestine. One is West Gaza and Gaza Strip and West Palestine.
Correct.
So this is okay. This is clear. Let's say that you're right, and Palestinians have been training, and this is the fifth generation of the Palestinians who are being trained to be anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic. Yes. Okay, so, but my question would be, see, first of all, that I have studied, I have been told since my childhood that Jewish are settlers in the Arab, in Palestinian region. They were not there before. They have a few very less population in Palestine. They were Europeans, and most of them were from Germany. After this Nazi period,
yes.
They were. And the World War II, they were settled in Palestine. Okay, I don't know that much. I'm not a history buff, and I don't know that much history. I'd like to discuss the part of the history that I have seen in my life. I was born in 1998, and afterwards, what I have heard is that I would like to discuss with you.
Okay, perfect.
So the Palestinian, the Israelis, the Jewish are settler in Palestine, first of all, and they have their settlements in Israel, what we call now Israel and Palestine, and they are expanding themselves, and they are making more settlements in the Palestinian and the lands of the Palestinians, the lands of the Christian Palestinians. I have seen a few documentaries, and they are saying that our land is being occupied by the settlers. Okay. So if someone snatches my land and they make their homes, they settle themselves on my land, what would I do? I would definitely pick up arms and start something. If that is not being resolved on I'm not giving some place in judiciary. My judicial system is for the Jewish, and that's not for the Palestinians. So what options would I have? I would just have an option, pick up the arms. So they have that option, and they are using that option. For me, that's it.
Okay. Yeah. Now I get
emotional because we get emotional to that.
Man, I understand you completely. And why you're having me on this program, on this cast, is because I'm challenging the false narrative which you have just explained to me from your point of view. But let me explain to you why what you have suggested is what I call a false narrative, and why propaganda has taken over, and where myth has morphed into fact. Now, you understandably have asked me, what would you do if settlers from Europe came into your country and took your land? What would you do? You would fight. Of course you would. But let me explain to you, Faisal, why that question is a false narrative and a false question. And I have all the documentary evidence and historical evidence to prove why the people in Pakistan are being mocked by the Palestinians into believing that that is the case. Let me explain why. You will know from history and evidence that there has always been a Jewish connection to the land of Israel. We don't have to discuss that. That's case.
Yeah, we don't
You're
have
also
to go into
you're
that.
also correct, Faisal. You're also correct in saying that Zionists from Europe, Jewish but nevertheless Zionists, came into Europe to reclaim what we Jews would call reclaiming their indigenous homeland. But you're saying to me, but Peter, it was the Palestinians who were indigenous to that area, and the Zionists stole and settled illegally on their land. That's what you and your audience have been brought up with. Nothing, Faisal, is further from the truth. And let me explain why. And I can ask you and anyone listening to your, hopefully when your audience see this, they say, hey, Peter's got a point there. If the Palestinians were indigenous to that geography, if they were, then think about this, Faisal. They would have fought against various invaders to defend their homeland. There would have been conflicts with the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans. Do you know what, Faisal? I've researched this subject for the best part of 15 years. I can find not one shred of evidence of any Palestinian conflict, war or battle against those invaders who I have just mentioned, who at various times in history conquered that land. I'll tell you something else, Faisal. I can find no evidence of an indigenous Palestinian currency. I can find no evidence of an indigenous Palestinian flag or emblem. I don't even know, Faisal, what language the Palestinians spoke. Now, you would probably say Arabic, would you not? I'm asking you as a question now. Would you say that the Palestinian mother tongue is Arabic?
Yeah.
But Faisal, let me tell you this. In Arabic, there is no sound or letter P for Palestinian. There's not. So the Palestinians would call themselves Philistinians. Well, let me tell you something, Faisal. Philistinian.
That's an English word. Palestine is an English word.
Palestine is an English word. So what would the Palestinians have called themselves in their mother tongue? What name?
Palestine.
What?
Palestine.
Philistine. Yes. Now, Philistine is simply the Arab pronunciation for Philistine. And Philistine, when you give a definition, means extinct invaders from Greece or uncouth, uncultured heathens. Never in history until 1964 has there ever been a tribe, a race, a people, a culture, an ethnicity known as the Palestinians. I have read numerous accounts from itinerant scribes who travelled the area from the time that Muhammad supposedly, from the year 632, when Muhammad had the dream, until 1924, the fall of the Ottoman Empire. Not one of the 300 itinerant scribes who documented their travels ever wrote about a people, a race, a culture, a tribe called the Palestinians. They did not exist as an ethnic group. They are a creation of the 1960s, created by the Soviet Union in response to American expansionism in the Middle East. Now, that's a fact. If the Palestinians existed as a people, there would be evidence. There is no documentary evidence of any race, tribe, people, culture, ethnicity known as Palestinian. I can't find one Palestinian leader. I can't find one Palestinian currency, one Palestinian flag. There is no archaeological evidence that the Palestinians existed.
Okay, Palestinians are not indigenous, as you say, and they have been created by Soviets. So let's see in it a way the state of Pakistan. The Muslims were not here in our part of the world where there were only Hindus. Okay, as you know, this was part of the Mahabharata. So
Yeah.
Also the concept of the nation state came later on. So the boundaries, they were fluid. We have here the Afghan influence, we have here the Persian influence, we have here the Arab influence, and Central Asian influence, right? So this part, if you see it, then if you see it in this way, then you would justify the rise of Hindutva, and you would justify and you would say that there should be a Mahabharat and all of the Muslims should be evacuated from this region. Okay, so this is your justification for that.
No. That's not the issue, and that's not my justification. If you remember, the question you posed to me was, look, Peter, the Palestinians believe that the Zionists have come into the country and stolen and settled on their land and colonized it. And I'm saying to you, actually, Faisal, it wasn't the Palestinian land anyway, because there were no Palestinians there. And the other thing you have to remember, Faisal, is when the Ottomans ruled the area from 1517 to 1917, after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the League of Nations created, through the mandate system, other nation states: Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Mesopotamia, which is now Iraq, and the Jewish state of Israel. They were all created under the mandate system.
How many Jews were living here at that time?
Probably about
the number of the Jews.
In 1948.
Yeah.
You mean probably about 400?
When the nation of the state, when the state of Israel was created.
Probably about 3 to 400,000, similar to the number of Arabs that were living there. And those Arabs did not identify themselves as Palestinians. And can I just tell you something else which you and your viewers may not know, but I'm sure must find very unpalatable, but truth. Under the Ottoman Empire, there were only 5 categories of land which the British, when they took over in 1917, carried through until the end of the mandate system. Those 5 categories of land, they might still be pertinent in Muslim countries, especially Pakistan, but they were Mulk, Miri, Waqf, Matruka, and Mewat. Now, we hear all the time that the Zionists and the Zionists stole all the land illegally. Now, the Arab Higher Committee, who testified on oath to the Peel Commission in 1937, stated categorically that no land had been stolen, all had been purchased legally, and the main sellers of the land were Syrian, Turkish, and Lebanese families. The Fellahin did not own any of the land. There's something else that you must be aware of as well. The total area of Israel is tiny, Faisal. It's 10,000 square miles. It's nothing. Absolutely nothing. If you look at it on a map in the Middle East and see how it's surrounded by other Arab Muslim countries, you will see it's this little dot on the map that everyone is so focused on. Now, of that 10,000 square meters, at the end of the mandate system, 70% was called state land or wasteland, or what the Turks called Mewat Matruka. It wasn't owned by anybody. It was designated for the Jewish homeland under the mandate system, and no Arab or Palestinian or Muslim or Jew or Christian owned it. It was 70% wasteland and state land, desert, parks, that kind of thing, roads. 1% was called Waqf. I'm sure you might be interested in that or know what it's about. It's land that's, for example, mosques are built on, and it's the land that belongs to the mosque or the church or the synagogue. It's for religious sites, and that was only 1%. 1%, so that's 71% of the total geography. Mulk was what we called freehold, and all the freehold land, it's only 1%, all the freehold land was purchased legally by the Zionists, by Jewish organisations. So we have the remainder, 28%, which is Miri, or what we called leasehold land. And the leasehold land was on very short leases to the Fellahin, the farmers, 3-year leases. The legal requirement to maintain a lease was that the land had to be cultivated, productive, had to be in production for 3 consecutive years. And because of the drought and the malaria that hit the area in 1915 and was not recultivated, 2/3 of that remaining 28% of the land reverted back to the state as wasteland and state land because the Fellahin were unable to cultivate the land. So when you talk to me and when your audience gets so bitter and angry about the Zionists stealing,
I'm not getting angry.
No. Sorry, I'm talking. I apologise. I know you as an individual not, but when your audience reads the papers about the Israeli-Palestinian issue, because they're a Muslim, because they're naturally aligned with the Palestinian cause, and they read in all the press that the Zionists stole Palestinian land, and I said to you at the beginning, what I'm trying to do is to push back and challenge the false narrative. What I'm saying to you, that actually, Faisal, no Palestinian land was actually ever stolen. It just wasn't. It's a lie. It's a myth. It
never existed. You say it never existed.
That's exactly what I'm saying, and I'm proving to you. If you read the Hope Simpson report of 1930, or the Peel Commission report of 1937, you can see that the lengths that the British went to identify the land and how it was split up. And I'm saying to you, the only land that was in the hands of non-Jews was the land that belonged to the Syrian, Lebanese and Turkish families who sold the land at extravagantly high prices to the Zionists. There's something else that I just want to, whilst we're on this subject, and then you can hit me with all the questions you like. I have a mountain of evidence sitting in my files over here that will actually explain to you and your audience that today's Palestinians, those who identify today as Palestinians, are actually the probably 5th generation of Arabs who came into what was then called Palestine because of what, Faisal? Because of the economic benefits that Zionism had brought to the area. I've got statements and captions from the Encyclopedia of 1911, from Winston Churchill's statements, from the statements of the British consuls, from the statements. I'll give you an example. The governor of Haran province in Syria complained in 1936 that 40,000 Syrians had gone into Palestine to plough the fields for the Jews, and the Syrian fields could not be ploughed because Zionism was paying more. The Jews were actually paying more. So please understand that those who you in Pakistan consider to be indigenous Palestinians who had their lands illegally stolen and colonized by the Zionists, that is just really, it's mythology. It's mythology. The Fellahin didn't even register the land, Faisal, because most of it was owned by Turks, by Lebanese and by Syrians who sold the land at exorbitant prices to the Zionists. And that is all documented. It's there, as is the proof
of the thousands of Arabs who came into the area simply because of the economic benefits brought on by Zionism. Now, if we want to talk about what happened in 48 onwards with the war, then that's an issue that we can go through as well. But I hope that if I'm correct in what I'm saying, and you and perhaps many of your audience are thinking, Guy, this guy's talking rubbish, because we have been brought up in the knowledge that all the Zionists came into the area, illegally stole the land, kicked out the Palestinians whose land it was. And I'm saying to you, Faisal, that is not the case. But unfortunately, the myths have morphed into facts, and the propaganda against people like me is so overwhelming that I am battling every day trying to challenge the false narrative that you and your fellow Pakistani Muslims have been brought up on.
Okay, all right. So here is the case that Palestinians don't have the land. I'm actually agreeing with everything you are saying.
Wow.
And I think in this way, I would leave it up to my audience to decide who is right and who is wrong. And I actually am not an expert on Palestine, and I won't be commenting much on that. But this is what a common Pakistani thinks, that whatever
Sure.
I'm saying is that what a common Pakistani or common
Of course,
Muslim
I understand that completely.
Okay, the land wasn't that of the Palestinians. According to you, they are Philistinians. Philistinians,
No,
right?
no, not according to me. All I'm saying is that if there truly were an indigenous Palestinian people, if there truly were, there would be evidence, whether it was a currency, a coin, a flag, an emblem, an indigenous language. Do you know, Faisal, you would know how close apparently Jerusalem is to the Muslim Palestinian. You would understand that as a Pakistani Muslim, how close it is. Do you know, Faisal, in Judaism, ever since I've been a little boy, on every Shabbat, on every Saturday, on every day of the week when I say my prayers, I, as a Jew, pray for the well-being of Jerusalem. Okay? At our festivals, whether it's the Passover festival or the Festival of Lights, the Jewish people pray for Jerusalem. I don't know of one Palestinian song or prayer, not one, and I've asked my Palestinian friends, and I have many, believe me. I don't know of one prayer or song that the Palestinians sing or chant or say, connecting them to their, apparently, one of their most holy cities, Jerusalem. Now, why is that? Why is there not a prayer that the Palestinian Muslims would say, or a song that they would sing at either festivals or through a daily prayer, or as a traditional song that connects them to Jerusalem?
Don't they go into Al-Aqsa Mosque and do their prayers that the Israeli forces don't want them to, don't let them to? And I have seen during this Ramadan, I have seen footages from the Al-Aqsa Mosque where the common Palestinians, Muslims were being use shotguns.
Okay, you're right. They do go into the Al-Aqsa Mosque and pray.
What they from Hamas? What they the terrorists?
No. You're right. The Palestinian Muslims, the Arab Muslims, do go into the Al-Aqsa Mosque and pray. Faisal, did you know, and I bet you didn't, that in the Jewish state of Israel, there are 403 mosques. 403 mosques. There's not a synagogue in Gaza, but there are 403 mosques in Israel. Now, what I'm saying to you is, when a Muslim undertakes his daily prayers and his rituals, when the Palestinians pray, there's not one prayer or song that has Jerusalem in it. It doesn't exist. Now, why is that? And there's something else, Faisal, that you as a Muslim would be very much aware of. and again, I hope your audience understands when I'm going to say this. I truly believe from my studies of the Quran, and I have studied the Quran, that in numerous surahs within the Quran, Allah via Muhammad bequeathed, bestowed, and promised the whole of the geography to the Jewish people, the children of Israel. Not once in the Quran, not once is the word Palestinian or Jerusalem mentioned, but there are numerous surahs within the Quran, and I've got a list of them written down that promise the Jewish people the whole of the geography. Now, Allah's prophecy has been fulfilled. The Jewish people are currently controlling the geography. It was bestowed and bequeathed to them, not to the Palestinians,
By the
but
way,
to the Jewish
we
people.
also believe that this is one of the signs of the Qiyamah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I truly believe, and I say this as a righteous person, I truly believe that if, as a Muslim, you believe in the Palestinian claims to Jerusalem, I believe that is defying and mocking the Quran. Because the Quran, as I say, in numerous surahs, beginning at 237, going on to number 53, I think, and in between, there are about 20 surahs that continuously bestow, bequeath, and promise the geography to the land of Israel, not to the Palestinians, who are never mentioned in the Quran. Now, there's something else that you as a Muslim would also know. In hadiths after the Quran, how should I put this in the nicest possible way? I, as a Jew, are frowned upon in certain hadiths afterwards, that the Jews are infidels, let's put it that way. But there's something else that you must recognize. The term Jew, when used in the Quran in a negative way, does not mean the total collective of the Jewish people. In the Quran, when Allah and Muhammad talk about the Jewish people, they use the following terms: the Israelites, the children of Abraham, the sons of Jacob, the chosen people, the children of the land of milk and honey. The only term that they use the word Jews is when it's used in a negative term, and this only relates to those Jews who broke away from Judaism, started off Christianity, and challenged all other faiths. You would know from your knowledge of English that Jesus Christ was called King of the Jews. He was never known as King of the children of Israel, as in the Quran, or King of the sons of Abraham, as in the Quran, or sons of the Israelites, as in the Quran. The term Jews is used simply as a negative sense within the Quran to identify that breakaway group. The Quran, I believe, is actually a pro-Zionist document. Why would there be so many surahs bestowing, bequeathing, and promising the geography to the Jewish people? I throw that out to you and your audience.
Yeah, they will do their own research and just comment and do the comments and whatever they think. So let's move ahead. And the next thing that I would like to go ahead is that the accusations of the human rights violation by Israeli government, the policies of the Israeli government against Palestinians, the oppressive environment that we see, whatever we see on social media. Actually, also one thing that we see on the media is, whosoever have the media power, most of the media is being regulated by the Jews. Okay, the Facebook, and other media houses that are being run by the. But we see so much of that, so much against happening against the Palestinians. So how do you respond to those allegations,
Okay.
the human rights abuses?
Okay, I'll tell you how I respond. Now, this is also going to come as a shock to you, okay, and to your audience. If I said to you that Pakistan, I repeat, Pakistan 3 times, have killed more Palestinians than Israel, you would think that I was a madman, would you not?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so you need to understand your history about the Palestinians. In 1970, the Palestinians under Arafat tried to overthrow the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, who had done nothing but give support to the Palestinians. The Russians thought that the Palestinians would be their tool to challenge American expansionism, and the Jordanians, to be fair, were pro-American. But Jordan had a trick up their sleeve. They called in, and I'm sure this name is familiar to you, who was then a brigadier, Brigadier Zia al-Haq. Is that name familiar to you?
Yeah, very much.
Okay. Zia al-Haq and his elite Pakistani troops supported the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan in defeating Arafat and his militias. Over 25,000 Palestinians were killed and over 150,000 were ethnically cleansed to Lebanon. Now, I bet you, Faisal, that's something that you didn't even know about. I would put it to you. It was called Black September, and you can check this out on whatever. Do your own research, as you say your audience will. So Brigadier Faisal, Zia al-Haq, who then became Prime Minister of Pakistan, was
President of Pakistan.
President of Pakistan, my apologies, was instrumental in assisting Pakistan's friend, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, in defeating, but not only defeating, slaughtering them in Black September 1970. Now, I would guarantee you, my friend, that you and your audience, especially the younger members of your audience, people who are older than you, perhaps your grandfather, if I hope he's still alive, and your grandmother's generation, would have been aware of what happened in 1970, 53 years ago. And Pakistan, I assured you, helped the Hashemite kingdom in Jordan in slaughtering in defeating the Palestinians. Now, over 25,000 were killed. Since the beginning of the creation of the State of Israel, in all the conflicts between Israel and the Palestinians, it is, no one knows the exact number of Palestinians killed in conflict, but they think it's around about 13,000, 14,000. So when I say to you, I challenge the false narrative, this is something that you and your audience, I think, will say, this guy's mad. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But the documentary evidence is there and you can check it. Now, if the media were truly controlled by the Jews, if I was in control of the media, Faisal, as a Jew, I assure you that kind of story would be on every front page and repeated over and over and over again. It is not, because I believe that the Western media has gone a different way. I think it's the BBC, CNN, certainly Al Jazeera, obviously, have become very anti-Israel, very anti-Israel.
Would you call it anti-Semitic?
Well, if do you know something? That's an interesting one. That's a very interesting one, because I know that people will say, you know, if you criticise Israel, all of a sudden you're called a Jew hater, an anti-Semite. And of course, I know that's not true, but I can't help believing that what's facilitating this anti-Jewish state rhetoric, and let's face it, Faisal, Israel gets a huge amount of saturation publicity that no other country in the world seems to attract. If a Palestinian, God forbid, and I would say the same if it was an Israeli Jew, were killed by accident in conflict, it would be. I'm sure it's spread all over the Pakistani news, and as it is in the UK and as it is in the United States as well. So I don't believe that the media, although there might be Jews in very senior positions in the media, like Zuckerberg in Facebook, for example, as we call that, but Murdoch is certainly not Jewish, who controls a lot of the New York press. And much of the press now, I believe, especially CNN, has become very anti-Jewish. There's one other thing. Going back from what I said about the Pakistani conflict with the Palestinians, because of that, I said to you, the Palestinians were ethnically cleansed to Lebanon. That also is fact. What happened then? The Lebanese, who had been nothing but supportive of the Palestinians, the Palestinians were treacherous. They started slaughtering Lebanese in one horrific incident in a village called Damour in 1974. The Palestinians slaughtered over 1,000 Lebanese women and children because, again, the Russians believed that they couldn't get a foothold now in Jordan, so Lebanon was going to be the base. And that's why, even to this day, when you talk about apartheid in Israel with the Palestinians, I can assure you and your audience that Lebanon has a system of apartheid against the Palestinians. They are not allowed certain jobs. They are not allowed to vote. They are not allowed to go into certain areas. So Lebanon,
that is what happens to the immigrants mostly. That is what happens.
It doesn't happen to the 2 million plus Arabs that live in Israel. I assure you, it doesn't. I've go to Israel. I've been there maybe 50 or 60 times. Believe me, it's not only Israel I've been to. I've worked all around the Middle East as well. I've worked in Egypt. And I know what happens to minority groups in Arab countries. And I assure you, in the Jewish state of Israel, the population of 2 million plus Arabs, where there are 400 mosques, just think about that, Faisal, 400 mosques in the Jewish state of Israel, where Arabs can freely pray.
What we see the human rights violations, and that is being not reported by me. That is being reported by the United Nations and other human rights organizations. They criticize the Israel's treatment of Palestinian children, being the treatment of Palestinian children, including arrests and detentions. You know that they have happened, and the justice system in the Israel always favors the Jews. Don't you agree with that?
May I ask you this? Do you think the justice system in Pakistan favors the Muslims?
That favors the Muslims, yeah.
Okay, so let's say you're right.
But we have very less minority over here. And
but Faisal, let's say you're right. Let's say that is the case. But then I go back. Then I revert back to you. In fact, my next article, funnily enough, in Blitz, is all about the treatment of Palestinian children by their leadership. It's about child abuse in the Palestinian territories, not by the Israelis or the Jews, but by the Palestinians themselves. But let's say you're right, Faisal, when you see these Human Rights Watch organizations just constantly criticize the Jewish state of Israel, the saturation coverage, it makes front page news. But Faisal, what about the 200 children killed building tunnels for Hamas, for example? You don't hear about that under slave labor conditions. So, and the human rights organizations, these NGOs, how can I put it? I truly believe people like Ken Roth, who was in charge of various NGOs, and UNRWA, the United Nations Works and Refugee Agency, if they were truly impartial, surely they would have exposed the very thing that I exposed at the beginning of this interview with you regarding the indoctrination of Palestinian children in Nazi ideology. Surely if they were impartial, that would, you as a a Muslim Pakistani and your audience, who I know heart breaks when they see pictures of the Israeli treatment of the Palestinians. But surely, Faisal, if these human rights organisations were truly impartial, they would have said, well, hey guys, you know what, the Palestinians... So
you're saying they are favouring the Palestinians, but...
Faisal, I know, are they favouring the Palestinians? The amount of money that the Palestinians have received in the last 5 decades, the billions of dollars, and what good has it done? It's made the leadership multi-billion. Arafat's widow is worth $8 billion and living in Paris. The mansion that Abbas lives in the West Bank settlement is fantastic. The Hamas leadership are all living in Qatar. They are hugely wealthy people. The only people that haven't benefited from the
living in Dubai as well.
Dubai, the only people who haven't benefited from the billions of dollars from donor countries, and I'm sure Pakistan has been one of those donor countries, have been the poor Palestinian people who have just been fed anti-Jewish propaganda for 5 generations. And going back to where we started from, we both said that all we pray for to our different gods is peace between the two. There cannot surely be peace unless the Palestinians are made to ditch their charters. And I think what will drive that, Faisal, will be the Arab Muslim nations who are joining the Abraham Accords and where there is trade. Israelis are now going to Saudi and the United Arab Emirates. I think Saudi once a week, and there are more Israelis in the United Arab Emirates than there are in North London. Believe me, it's true. And in Morocco, Faisal, I promise you, this is the way where reasonable people like you and I, who are having a discussion here, man to man, different religions, but with mutual respect for each other's religions, and I hope your audience as well, I honestly believe the way to peace is when pressure is put on the Hamas leadership in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority leadership in the West Bank to ditch their charters, come up with something completely new, and to stop indoctrinating their children. I promise you, Faisal, in the Jewish state of Israel, Jewish children aren't brought up to hate Palestinian children. They're really not. And Golda Meir...
But that's coming up. Whatever I have seen, that's coming up. And whatever I have read is that the settlers, they make rounds of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They carry... they do sloganeering against the Palestinians. That's what and there is also happening on the streets. This is also happening on the streets as well. That is something alarming right now.
When you say happening on the streets, it's not happening in the streets in mainstream Israel. If you go to Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or Haifa, there is a multiracial mix of people.
But maybe happening on the peripheries.
So I think what you're talking about are the what we would call the settler colonies, the enclaves that are purely for the entirely religious groups, where that may be happening. I have to be honest with you, although I think I can speak intelligently on most subjects on the Israel-Palestinian issue, when it comes to the settlers, they are extreme in much the same way as the Palestinians are, but I honestly believe they can be brought to heel if the indoctrination of Palestinian children stops. I think that is the absolute key issue above any other. The politicians will accommodate each other if they see a window of opportunity. And thank God that when I first started covering this issue, there was no possibility at all of any Arab nations trading with Israel. Now we've got Egypt, Jordan, UAE, Morocco. Chad has opened up an embassy. Chad, which is a Muslim country, as you know, in Africa. And Israel has so much to offer in technology. I think one of the issues, however, that we haven't covered is the influence of non-Arab Iran on the on Hamas. I think Iran are a major they are a major influencer. There's something else that I don't know whether your audience is aware of. You would be aware in Pakistan of the conflict currently going on in Syria, where the militant groups are trying to overthrow the Syrian regime of Assad. Okay, we know that. We also know that over 500,000 people have been killed in that conflict, and perhaps 1.5 million displaced into refugee camps that United Nations are controlling. Did you know, Faisal, that in that conflict, over 6,000 Palestinians who have been fighting for the anti-Assad militia groups, such as ISIL, for example, have been killed in that conflict? Now, could you imagine, my friend, if 6,000 Palestinians had been killed by the Jewish state of Israel, your newspapers, your media, your channel, your parliamentarians, day after day after day, would be shouting from the rooftops about the racist Israelis. But because the Syrians have killed them in this conflict, and again, I'm not making this up, this is something you can go and check out, and I hope your audience will. We don't even hear about it. Now, if I, as a Jew, were controlling the media and was very pro-Israel, I assure you that would be another story that I would be having on every page, every day of the week, about the atrocities being inflicted on the Palestinians who are fighting for the anti-Assad militias.
Okay, so do you think that one state solution is the solution, or two-state solution?
No, I can't. The ones. Listen, we have the Jewish state of Israel, which currently, over time, I'm sure the Muslims will actually be a majority anyway.
with the passage of time, expanding with the passage of time. The Israeli state is expanding.
Yes, but not to the multiples of. I mean, there are. I think 23% of the population is non-Jewish in Israel at the moment. Okay. I honestly believe that an Arab diplomat recently wrote an article which I thought was very pragmatic and very insightful. And he suggested the following, that those Palestinians living in Gaza should actually come under the control of Egypt, and those Palestinians living in what we call the West Bank should actually come under the control of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, with full citizenship. So the Gazans being given Egyptian citizenship, the West Bank Palestinians being given Jordanian citizenship. That, from this Arab ambassador, I thought was one of the most insightful, knowledgeable, pragmatic arguments that I've heard for a long time. I'm sure it's possibly in the mindset of those Arab nations. I only think that may be an opportunity when a majority of the 23 Arab Muslim nations who are in the Arab League become a majority who have joined the Abraham Accords. So far, I think 6 of them have. Saudi, I think, will be the next to join. Sudan would have joined had it not been for their internal domestic politics that blew up about 3 or 4 months ago. Sudan were on the cusp of agreeing.
When are you going to see Pakistan?
Pardon?
When are you going to see Pakistan
Oh,
joining that?
my friend, if
non-Arab Muslim country.
I would be overjoyed if I don't know if there are any currently, given the situation in Pakistan with Imran Khan and what's happening with your domestic politics at the moment. But you tell me this, are there any parliamentarians of influence who are, I'm not saying pro-Israel, but not anti-Israel? Or
they won't be able to speak on the record, or on they won't be able to speak it allowed, but there would be some pragmatic politicians that would want, and also the diplomats that would want good relations with the state of Israel, but they can't speak it because we have a different situation over here.
Yeah, of course.
That has been that has become a sensitive issue to talk about having relations with the Israel in Pakistan.
Because what's happening, Faisal, is Israel is being driven into the arms of India. That's the trade between the two countries is on such a high upward trajectory, and it's simply because there is an impossibility of dual Israel-Pakistani relations. If I pray that would somehow happen, but I can't see that. And Israel, of course, because of that, is being driven into the arms of India, and vice versa. And culturally, and from a trade point of view, there's so much they're doing in agricultural production. And because of what's happening with the natural disasters in Pakistan, the disastrous floods you had recently, Pakistan could benefit from Israeli technology, as so many other countries in Africa and the Central America are doing. It's terrible that maybe they do deal. I have heard actually, Faisal, your audience may be aware of this, that through a certain country in the Far East, Pakistan is actually importing through a third party Israeli technology.
Yeah, that can be, whatever. This is my personal belief that we should have trade with the Israel. We should have trade with India. If we want to, we want to stand on our own feet. Our economy is, that is tanked. We are in a difficult situation right now. There is high inflation in Pakistan. The people are fleeing from Pakistan. So many have left. So many are leaving, especially the younger generation. We have a huge bulge of youth. So more than 50% of our population is younger. Yeah. But most of them are leaving Pakistan. So that's an alarming situation. And for that, to tackle that, we need to have some pragmatic approach from that. That's what I think. But obviously, I'm not into policy making. Obviously, I'm not sitting in parliament, though I'm sitting near parliament, but I can't go inside the parliament, Yeah.
Faisal, you should stand for parliament. You would be. Pakistan needs people like you, believe me.
Thank you very much.
And will you ever come to the UK?
No, I haven't come to the UK. I've only gone to Saudi Arabia to perform my Umrah. Okay. Yeah, that's one country.
My home is your home. My home is your home when you decide to come over.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, so kind of you, Peter. I would love to be in your company to discuss so many things.
Faisal, I truly hope your audience listens to what I say, not with hatred or contempt or mocking, but with an open mind, because
hopefully
I hope that's the case.
Definitely, this is a new perspective, and they must look into that. I would definitely myself look into that, and would like to see that if what you are saying is factually true. So that's what definitely my approach be to this discussion.
Okay.
Is there anything that you would like to say at the end, Peter?
No, I just thank you for giving me the opportunity to challenge the false narrative in front of an audience that I know would naturally be hostile to some of the things that I'm saying. But I hope, and when they see this podcast, that they look with an open mind and say, let's see if what this guy is saying is truthful. If I'm talking rubbish, you're not going to have me ever on again. But if I'm talking the truth, then maybe there be a question and answer session with some of your audience.
Yeah, sure. We will have you. We may have, if if our audience likes this discussion and they want more answers, so we can have a Twitter space as well, or we can have another podcast session.
Perfect. And one
It
last
was-
question, my friend. How does this now reach your audience? Do you send the podcast on Twitter and it reaches those who follow you, or what's the process?
Let's discuss it off the record. Let me
Oh, no problem.
stop the
Fine.
record.
Okay. Thank you very much
Thank
for your
you,
time.
Peter. Thank you.